students. Today we discuss about physical effects of heat. Generally there are three types of physical effects of heat. Heat can change the temperature of the object, heat can change the state of the substance, and heat can change the dimensions. Now the change of temperature. Change of temperature means when object is heated, that means when heat is supplied to the object, the temperature of the object or substance increases. When heat is released by the object, then its temperature decreases. Temperature increases when heat is given to the object, and temperature decreases when heat is taken out from the object. Now the question is how much amount of heat is released or how much amount of heat is given by the object. That means the quantity of heat absorbed or given out by the object during the thermal change. This heat loss and heat gain depends on three factors. What are these factors? The factors are mass, change of temperature, and the specific heat capacity. Heat loss or heat gain is directly proportional to the mass m. Heat loss or heat gain is directly proportional to the change of temperature indicated by delta T. The heat loss or heat gain is again directly proportional to the specific heat capacity, which is indicated by small s. So heat loss or heat gain is equal to mass into change of temperature into s. Change of temperature means it may be increase in temperature or it may be decrease in temperature. When heat is given, temperature increases. That means final temperature is higher than the initial temperature. When heat is lost, then what happens? Then the temperature decreases. That means initial temperature will be higher than the final temperature. To calculate the change in temperature, for heat gain, change in temperature is final temperature minus initial temperature. Here the final temperature is higher than the initial temperature. Now in case of heat loss, here the temperature difference is equal to initial temperature minus final temperature, because here the initial temperature is higher than the final temperature in case of the heat loss. Now the heat loss or heat gain depends on, first of all, the mass of the object, second is the change in temperature, and third one is the specific heat capacity. Now the question is, what is specific heat capacity? To know it, first you have to take the formula. Heat gain or heat loss is equal to m into delta S into delta T into S. Mass into change in temperature into specific heat capacity. By solving, we get specific heat capacity is equal to H by m into delta T. If you take this m is equal to 1 and this delta T is equal to 1, then what you get? Then you get S equal to H. If m equal to 1, delta T is equal to 1, then you get S equal to H. This relation gives the definition of specific heat capacity. Now what? If you take 1 gram of any substance and change its temperature by 1 degree, then certain amount of heat is required, and this amount of heat is known as the specific heat capacity of that substance. Again, you take unit amount of substance, its temperature increased by 1 degree, then a certain amount of heat is required, and this amount of heat is known as specific heat capacity of that substance. Now the definition is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of unit mass through 1 degree is taken as specific heat of that substance. Now the unit. What is the SI unit of? We know the specific heat capacity is equal to H by m into delta T. The SI unit of H, that means heat, is joule, mass is kilogram, and delta T, that means temperature, is Kelvin. So it is the joule per kg per Kelvin, which is written as joule kg to the power minus 1 and Kelvin to the power minus 1. For CGS unit, unit of heat is calorie, mass is gram, and the temperature is degree centigrade. So it will be calorie by per gram per degree centigrade, that means calorie gram to the power minus 1 degree centigrade to the power minus 1. This is the unit of specific heat capacity. Now the another question is there. The specific heat capacity of lead is 0.03 calorie per gram per degree centigrade. Now what is the meaning of it? It means that 0.03 calorie heat is needed to increase the temperature of 1 gram lead by 1 degree centigrade temperature. That means this amount of heat, that means 0.03 calorie heat is needed to increase the temperature by 1 degree centigrade, and the mass of the substance, that means mass of lead, is 1 gram. 0.03 calorie heat is necessary to increase the temperature of 1 gram lead through 1 degree centigrade. This is the meaning. Now if the in place of lead, if the another substance is there, then you replace the name by that substance, and if the number is changed, then you replace the number by that number. Now the specific heat capacity of water is very high as compared to the other substance, that means other liquid and other solid substance, and it is in CGS system it is 1 calorie per gram per degree centigrade, and in SI system it is 4200 joule per kg per Kelvin. Here the specific heat capacity of the substance is not constant. It varies. Its value varies very slowly with the variation of temperature. That means specific heat capacity depends on temperature. It decreases with the decrease of temperature. That means specific heat capacity decreases with the decrease of temperature, and it tends to zero at absolute zero temperature. When the temperature reaches at absolute zero temperature, then the specific heat capacity also tends to zero at zero. The value is zero. Now we know that we already indicate that the water has high specific heat capacity. But what is the advantage or what is the characteristics of water for that high specific heat capacity? Before going to that, we say that the water has very high specific heat capacity, and it is the highest among all the solids and liquids. But hydrogen is the highest, have the highest specific heat capacity among all the substance, and its value is 14,300 joule per kg per Kelvin nearly. It is that means hydrogen. Hydrogen has maximum, that means highest specific heat capacity of all the substances. Now, what is the characteristics of the water for its high specific heat capacity? Due to the very high specific heat capacity, water stores a greater amount of heat. That is why water is considered as a source of, alternative source of energy. Number 2, it can absorb a greater amount of heat from the other hot objects. That is why it is used as a coolant. It is a good coolant. Number 3, it absorbs greater amount of heat to increase its certain temperature. Must be, that is why it is a good coolant. It releases greater amount of heat to decrease its certain temperature, and it also remains hot for a long time, and it stores a greater amount of heat. That is why it is used as fermentation. Now the 5th, when same amount of heat is given, then the increase of temperature of water is less than that of the other substance. That means if you supply same amount of heat, then water increases its temperature less than the other object. And this phenomenon or this property of heat regulates the weather of coastal region. That means it produces the sea breeze and land breeze. Now the another topics, it is the thermal capacity or heat capacity. Here the heat capacity, not specific heat capacity, is the heat capacity. What is the heat capacity or thermal capacity? It is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of a body, of an object, not the substance, through 1 degree is treated as the thermal capacity of that body. That means if you take a body and its temperature increase by 1 degree, then certain amount of heat is required. This amount of heat is known as the thermal capacity or heat capacity of that body, body or object, not substance. So the thermal capacity is equal to mass into specific heat capacity. This is the formula to measure the heat capacity or thermal capacity, and it is indicated by capital C. C is equal to mass into specific heat capacity S. Now what is its unit? SI unit is joule per Kelvin. How? Mass. It is a mass. Mass is kg into specific heat capacity. It is joule per kg per Kelvin. This is the kg is and kg will cancel, so it will be joule per Kelvin. Joule by Kelvin, that means joule per Kelvin or joule k to the power minus 1. In the similar way, CGS unit is calorie per degree centigrade. Now the one very important question, prove that the unit of specific heat specific